Hello, I'm Mr. Wilson, and today I'm going to give you a crash course review in C# programming. Let's get started. I'm going to be using .NET-FIDDLE.net. This is easily accessible from any computer with an internet connection, and it works fine on a Chromebook as well. The interface is pretty simple. It'll allow us to create console-type programs. And what I'm going to do is just go through a few simple C# concepts with you. So this should be review if you have an understanding of basic C# programming. If you're new to programming, it'll give you some ideas of how things happen, but we're going to be moving quickly and it's not meant to necessarily teach you anything, just as a review. I want to start by declaring a couple variables. So remember, the first thing you have to do when you declare a variable is specify what the data type is. So for example, I could create an integer variable here, and I have to give the variable a name. Remember, all variable names, they can't have any spaces or weird characters. They can contain a number, but they can't start with a number. For example, if I wanted to call this tree 37, that would be fine, but I could not call it 37 tree. It's not allowed to start with a number. So this will be tree, and I'll assign it a value of 37 like this. All right. Now if I wanted to print to the screen what the value of that variable is, I could type console.write and tell it to print the value of that variable. When I hit the run button up here at the top, it will run my program, and then down here at the bottom, I can see that the output was 37. Now if I wanted to collect information from the user, I would do that this way. First of all, let's get rid of this stuff. I'm going to first display something on the screen to let the user know what I'm looking for. Console.writeLine, I'll just say enter your name. Remember that any English words, like this sentence here, needs to be contained in quotation marks. All right, to collect information from the user, I first need to create a variable that will store the information that the user types in. So that's going to be a string. So right up here at the top, I'll create a string variable, and I'll call this user's name. So now we're going to assign that variable, user's name. We're going to assign it a value. Now I could code that right into my code here, but that defeats the purpose. I wanted to ask them what their name was, and I want them to type it in. So let's go ahead and collect it from them. Console.readLine this time. Some empty parentheses and a semicolon. What this is going to do is prompt the user to type something in. They'll type it in and press the enter key. When they press the enter key, whatever it is that they typed will get stored in this variable. So just to confirm that we did successfully get some information put into the variable, let's go ahead and tell it to print the value of that variable. So once again, I'm going to console.writeLine. And I'm just going to print the value of user's name. And let's run this. All right, down here it says enter your name. I'm going to type in Mike and press enter, and you can see that it spits back out exactly what I had typed in. Now you may want to change this a little bit and include their input, the variable value, user's name. You might want to include that as part of a larger sentence. So instead of just regurgitating Mike, maybe you want to say, hello Mike, how are you today? So if I wanted to mix a sentence with the value of the variable, I could do that like this. Once again, I'm going to write a line, but I'm going to put in my little sentence, hello, and then a space. And then I'm going to close my quotation marks because I'm done with that portion of the English sentence. But I want to add some more to the sentence. I want to add the user's name. Hello, Mike. And then I'm going to add some more. after I say hello Mike, I'm going to put a little exclamation point, and then I'll say how are you today? Just like that. Now, when I run this one, you'll see once again, enter your name. I say Mike, I press enter, and this time it tells me hello, puts the value of the variable in there, and then it types out the rest of the sentence as well. Now, if I wanted to, I could continue on like this and collect more stuff, like they're going to say, how are you today? So then I'm going to get their response. So I might create another string variable here, and this would be called how are you, and that's going to store their response. So down here, I'm going to say how are you equals console dot readline, and then whatever they say, regardless of what they say, I'm just going to say console.writeLine, glad to hear it. So even if they say I'm doing horrible, I'm still going to say glad to hear it. So here we go. Let's go ahead and run this one and see what it looks like. Enter your name. My name is Mike. It says, hello Mike, how are you today? And it's waiting for my response one more time. So I'll say, I'm fine. And then it will say, glad to hear it. All right. So that's just a quick example of how to create, in this case, string variables. We can output information to the screen. We can collect information from the user. Whatever it is that they type in gets stored in a variable. We can then use that information to build a larger sentence. And then we can go on and ask more questions and print more information. So you can imagine that you can go on like this for as long as you needed to. All right, so that's some basic information on outputting to the screen, variables, and collecting information from the user. Let's talk a little bit about some loops. Let's create a counting variable. So this is going to be an integer. I'm going to call it count. I could call it anything I want. I'm going to call it count because that's what it's going to do. It's going to count for me. I'm going to start it at an initial value of 0, and then I'm going to have it count up. So there's lots of different types of loops that I can use. I'm going to use a for loop for my counting variable. It already starts at 0, but I'll just reiterate that here. I'm going to continue counting as long as the counting variable is less than 10. And each time through the loop, I'm going to increase the value of my counting variable by 1. I'm going to put in some opening and closing braces here. This defines where the beginning of the loop is and where the ending of the loop is. So any code that I put in there will run over and over again as long as the condition is true. Every time the loop runs, the variable will increase by 1. So here I'm going to do console.writeLine, and all I'm going to do is tell it to print the value of the counting variable. So when I run this, you can see it starts at 0 and it counts its way all the way up to 9, but notice that there is no 10. And you might say, why isn't there a 10? I put a 10 right here. Yeah, but you said continue looping as long as the value of count is less than 10. So when count equals 10, I could ask myself, is 10 less than 10? No, it's not. It's equal to 10. And therefore, this condition fails and the 10th item won't get printed because the loop is now complete. Now, just to show you that after the loop is done, what happens then? Let's go ahead and tell it to print something else. The loop finished. All right, so what we'll see here is it will still do my little counting thing, but then once it's done, it will print this little phrase to the screen. Let's run it. Here's 0 through 9, and then it tells me the loop finished. All right, that's a basic loop. Now that we've covered some of the basics of variables and loops and stuff, let's talk about a different type of loop. Let's say that we're going to collect some information from the user, and there's a chance that they might not give us the information that we're looking for. In that case, we have to tell them, hey, you didn't do this right, go ahead and try again. Now, we don't know how many times they're going to enter invalid data, so it's not like I can just set up a for loop and say, let them try this 10 times. They might get it right on the very first time. They might get it wrong 20 times in a row. So when I don't know how many times the loop needs to run, we use a different type of loop for that. We use a loop called a while loop. So let's go ahead and talk about how the while loop works. Here I'm going to create a while loop, and in these parentheses goes a condition. If the condition is true, then the loop will continue to run. When the condition evaluates to false, the loop will stop. So what I'm going to do is create a little variable. I'll create another counting variable and assign an initial value of 0. In here, I'm going to say, hey, does count equal 3? If that's a true statement, then the loop will run. If it's a false statement, the loop will not run. So right here, we can see that this is a false statement. So this loop isn't going to run at all. Let's go ahead and prove it. Console.writeLine. And I'm just going to tell it to print the counting variable. And down here, after the loop, I'm going to do the loop finished. That'll let me know when the loop has completed its task. So I'm going to say count equals 0. I'm going to ask the question, does count equal 0? No, that is a false statement. Since the loop's condition immediately evaluates to false, it's not going to run anything in there at all, and it's going to jump down and say loop finished. Let's go ahead and test it out. I hit the run button, and sure enough, it says the loop has finished, and it didn't do anything inside of here. So what I might want to do instead is say, hey, continue running this loop as long as the value of count does not equal 3. Well, let's reevaluate our condition. Count equals 0. Does count not equal 3? That is a true statement. Count does not equal 3. That means this is going to get printed to the screen. It's going to come back up and it's going to do it again. And it's going to keep doing that forever. This creates what's called an infinite loop. So what I need to do, let's go ahead and run. I haven't done this before. Let's run this and see if we can crash this thing. Yeah, okay, so here you can just see it prints endless zeros. That's not what we want it to do. So let's go ahead and write some different code. Let's go ahead and say count plus plus. That's going to increase the value of count by 1 each time. So here, the first time through, count equals 0. Does count not equal 3? That is correct. So it's going to increase the value of count and print that value to the screen. Let's go ahead and run it. Here we see it prints a 1 the first time because it started off as a 0, increased it to a 1, and then printed that 1. Then it comes back up and it tests itself again. Does count not equal 3? Well, right now count is a 1, and 1 does not equal 3. That's a true statement. So we're going to come back in here and do it again. Count plus plus. That means count is now a 2. We're going to print that 2 to the screen, come back up and do it again. Count is 2. Does 2 not equal 3? That is a true statement. So we're going to increase the count to a 3, print the 3 to the screen, come back up here. Count now equals 3. So let's think about this. Does 3 not equal 3? That is a false statement. 3 does equal 3. So since the condition now evaluates to false, the loop no longer runs, and it tells me that the loop has finished. All right, so this is, here you can see that I'm forcing this loop to loop a specific number of times, in this case 3 times. But what if I didn't know how many times this loop needed to run? I don't know. Remember, our ultimate goal here is to ask the user to enter information. He may enter the wrong information. We have to keep asking him over and over again until he gives us what we're looking for. So what do I do in that case? In that case, I just tell this loop to run forever. So here, think about this. Is true a true statement? Of course it is. And since true will always be true, that means that this loop will always run. It creates another infinite loop. That is not what we want to do. We must create some kind of means for this loop to terminate. So when we're ready to terminate this loop, what we can do is we can say, I'm going to increase the value of count, print it to the screen, and then I'm going to say break. Break will break me out of a loop. So let's see what this one does. When I run this, it only says 1 and then the loop finished. Let's think about what's going on here. Count equals 0. While true. True is a true statement, so I'm going to come in and do this. I'm going to increase the value of count. It was a 0, now it's a 1. Okay, I'm going to print that 1 to the screen. That's where that 1 came from. Then I'm going to break out of the loop. I'm not even going to bother testing it or looping anymore. I'm just going to break out. And that's where I get the loop finished. Okay, so how does this relate to user information and stuff? How can I collect some user information and verify whether or not they're giving me what I want? Let's go ahead and create a variable called response. It'll be an int response. I want to assign it an initial value of 0. Okay, so I'm going to tell them to enter the number 12. Let's get rid of this stuff. I'm going to go into my infinite loop and I'm going to actually collect their response now. Now I have to do something with that. They type in the number. What am I going to do with that number? I'm going to store it inside of that response variable I created. Response equals console.readline. This is an error. See, it says right here, I cannot implicitly convert a string to an int. So notice that our response is an int, but what readline does is it returns a string. I can't take a string and put it inside of a variable meant for integers. So what I have to do is convert this string into an integer. And the way we do that is with a special class called int32. It contains a method called parse. Inside of these parentheses, I put the string that I want to convert into an integer. So the string is my readline command. So I'm going to read the line. That's going to give me a string. I'm going to parse it looking for integers. And if I find an integer, I'm going to put it inside of that response variable. All right. So now that I have collected the number, I'm going to ask a question. If response equals 12, if they entered what I want, then I'm going to tell them thank you. Well, what if they didn't enter what I want? In that case, I'm going to do something else. Let's go ahead and test this one. All right, enter the number 12. If I enter it correctly, it's going to say thank you, and it's going to ask me again. See, it's awaiting more responses. I'm like, okay, 12. Thank you. Again, 12. You get the idea. See, I never put in my break command, so this loop is going to run infinitely. What I want to do here is when they enter the valid response, I'll tell them thank you, but then I'll also break out of the loop. And we've got to spell that right. Let's run this one. Enter the number 12. 12. Thank you. The loop finished. See, it tells me thank you, breaks out of the loop, and then the loop finished. Let's do it again, but this time we'll enter the wrong number. Enter 12, so I'm going to enter the number 13. It tells me that's the wrong number. And look, it's letting me try again. 12. That time it worked. It will continue letting me do that over and over again. Let's run it one more time. Let's say that I enter the number 1. It's like wrong number. Okay, a 2, wrong number. 3, wrong number. 12. Thank you. So here it will continue running the loop forever until I give it the right response, because that's what will break me out of the loop. Now let's run it one more time and let's try something different. Enter the number 12. Okay, you want me to type in the number 12? How about I type the word cat? That just broke everything. So here you can see I've got this error. It says a runtime exception. The input string was not in the correct format. It was on line 14. So let's look at line 14. Here it is right here. This line created a problem. So what happened was it was expecting an integer. It was going to parse whatever it is that I type in, looking for an integer. It did not find an integer, it just found a string. And that means, hey, I can't convert anything into a number here, therefore I can't store that number inside of response, and that breaks the whole thing. It was expecting an integer, it got a string. That was not the correct format. How do we fix this? All right, so what we do here, this is getting into something we call exception handling. And you can see right here, runtime exception. What an exception is, it's just a fancy way of saying error. So what we're really doing is error handling. How do we do this? So there's a command built into the C# language. Actually, most programming languages have this. It's called try. You basically tell the computer, hey, I want you to try this thing. If you can do this, fantastic. If you can't do this, then go ahead and fail gracefully or try again or something. The idea is that we want to catch the error before it has a chance to actually create one of these exceptions which causes our program to terminate. All right, so let's see how we do this. But I'm just going to push it down to get it out of my way for right now. Here's how we use the try command. So we type in try. And then in these braces, we put whatever code we think it is that might cause our program to crash. So we're basically saying, computer, I want you to try this. If it doesn't work, then we're going to catch the error and do something with it. All right, so what is it that we are going to try to do? This was the line that was causing the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that inside of my try block. I'm going to pull it out of here, paste it up into here. Try this, computer. If it is successful, then great, it'll just work. So if I entered a valid response, a 12 or 13, any kind of a number, then the code will continue running. So in that case, what I could actually do is I could put the rest of this stuff in here if I wanted to. Put this whole thing inside of this try block. And I'm going to tidy that up a little bit. There we go. Try this. Try running this line. If it works, fantastic. Business as usual. We'll check to see if it's a 12. If it is, we'll say thank you and we'll break out of the loop. If it's not a 12, then I'm going to do something else. I'm going to say wrong number and the loop will run again. We'll try it again. All right, so nothing new here. The next part of this is what happens if I try it and it doesn't work. In that case, I need to catch the error. So here we say catch, and we have to tell it what type of error we're expecting to catch. Now, how do we know what kind of error we're going to catch? It actually gave us the error when we ran it. And it was down here, it said exception, and I can't remember exactly what it said. I think it said system format exception, something like that. So let's go ahead and tell it that we're going to catch that. Catch the system.format exception. And again, that was specifically spelled out down here. It told you the name of the exception. So I just basically copy and paste it up here. Catch a system format exception. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to say console.writeLine. That wasn't even a number at all. Try again. All right. So here, if I catch the system format exception, I'm going to write them a message on the screen. That wasn't even a line at all. Try again. since I'm still inside the loop, it's going to come up here and give them another try. Because I successfully caught the error, the computer won't crash our program. Let's try running again and see if it works. Enter a 12. I enter a 13. It tells me wrong number and it lets me try again. Let's try a 15. Wrong number. Okay, now let's try entering something that isn't a number at all. This will cause the system format exception just like before. So here I'm going to type in the word cat. Here we have caught the error, which means that our program doesn't terminate. And it says that wasn't even a number at all. Try again. It's still inside of the same loop. And I can do that as many times as I need to. What if I type dog this time? That wasn't even a number at all. What if I go back to numbers now? Here's a 16, wrong number. And when I finally enter the right number, that's when it tells me thank you and the loop finished.